The New York Giants held their 9th OTA on Thursday. We've got practice observations, injury updates, and a whole lot more that's coming up next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the LockedOn Giants podcast, part of the LockedOn Podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Traina. Happy Friday to everybody. Welcome in, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. We do appreciate you. And today's episode of the LockedOn Giants podcast is brought to you in part by Blue Nile. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners can get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings, so use code LOCKEDON at checkout. All right, folks, on today's show, we are talking Giants OTA. The New York Giants had their 9th OTA on Thursday. On Friday, they are having their 10th one. The 9th OTA was open to the media. The 10th one is not. So we're going to talk about observations from the 9th OTA. We're going to give you some injury updates on Kayvon Thibodeaux, as well as a few other guys. And I have a special outtake, if you will, on the Giants offense, because I've really been focusing on that and how that's coming along. So all that and more is coming up on today's podcast. Again, glad to have you with us. Let's get right into stuff. And I want to kick things off with the Kayvon Thibodeaux injury. Now, head coach Brian Daboll was asked a question about Thibodeaux as well as Andrew Thomas and whether the two guys would be ready for next week's mandatory minicamp. So that's how the question initially started. And somehow it evolved towards Thibodeaux. But the answer, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that they're hopeful, but the old "we'll see." So in other words, they don't know. All right. Now, Andrew Thomas, we know, is recovering from an off-season procedure on his ankle, something to correct an issue that has basically been bothering him for a couple of years now. Thibodeaux's injury is a little different. All right. Now, the Giants have not said what it is. The only thing we know is that it's some kind of lower body injury. This happened during OTA number 3, which just so happened to be open to the media at the time. What happened was Thibodeaux came up lame towards the end of practice, went off to the side, looked like he was getting stretched. So we don't know if it's a calf, an ankle, a hamstring, whatever the case may be, but he hasn't been seen in team drills since. Matter of fact, he's been kept on the side, the 2 OTAs that has been open to the media since then, which, has raised some questions. What exactly is going on? Why hasn't he been able to maybe do some work? All right. Because, you see guys in red jerseys and they come out and some of them are able to do individual drills. Some of them are able to do limited team drills. Everybody's injury is different. Thibodeaux has not been able to do anything as far as we have seen. All right. And the two, the OTA 6 and OTA 9, the 2 OTAs that have happened since the injury. So Daboll was asked, is there a possibility that he'll be ready, Thibodeaux, that is, for next week's minicamp? And Daboll was trying to be kind of, I guess, elusive, maybe not to throw people off the scent, but maybe because he just didn't know. And he said, look, we'll see. He says, all I can tell you guys right now is that he's going to be in a red jersey today. All right. So that brought up further questions about whether Thibodeaux might be ready for the start of training camp. And again, Daboll was very elusive, not willing to commit. Yes, he would be ready, or no, we don't know, or whatever. So right now, the Giants are in a wait and see mode. Now, here's what I can tell you about the injury. Thibodeaux was working off on the side while the team was practicing. He was doing agility drills and he was running on the side, all right, under the watchful eye of a trainer. To my eyes, now remember, folks, I have not completed my medical degree. I am still many, many, many years away from completing that medical degree. So, but I can only tell you what I've observed. To my eyes, he was moving around well. But what I did not see, and I think what is important with Kayvon Thibodeaux, is the burst. All right. So there weren't that sudden, there weren't instances where he was, suddenly starting and stopping and all that stuff. It was just, a light jog, a light sprint, going back and forth up and down the field, seemed to be moving well. But the get off, if you will, that we did not see. And that's an important part of his game. So I took the whole, what I saw as encouraging. I do think that, if I had a guess right now, and again, I'm not privy to his treatment. I don't know exactly what his injury is, but if I had to guess, I think the Giants will hold him out of next week's mandatory minicamp. I do think he should be ready for training camp, which is roughly 7 weeks away, 7 or 8 weeks away. All right. So that all being said, I would not panic about this. All right. Thibodeaux doesn't need to be ready until training camp. That's when the pads go on. That's when the hitting starts, after the acclimation period. That's when, quote unquote, real football kicks in. The young man has been at the OTAs. He's been in the classrooms. He's been active in the meetings. It's not as though he's not learning stuff. All right. Now, I get it. Mental reps are one thing. At some point, you got to get out there and you got to do stuff. But I don't feel as panicked, if you will, as maybe some people might, about the fact that he's missing this time, because the kid, he's pretty good. I mean, coming out of college, he did some good things coming out of college. It wasn't like you have to start from scratch with him. So my thought is, would you like him out there practicing? Yes, you would. But is it a big deal right now that he's not? I don't think it is. Will it be a big deal if he is not ready to go by training camp? Then, yeah, I think it might be. So that's where things kind of stand right now with Kayvon Thibodeaux. I'm optimistic that he'll be ready for training camp. Again, that is just my opinion. It's not based on anything the Giants have said. I don't want to read too much between the lines of what Dable said when he did the knock on wood thing, but that's the impression I came away with. Now we'll find out if in a few weeks, if I am correct in my assumption and my reading of the tea leaves, or if I misread everything. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully he is ready to go by the time training camp starts. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, if you are looking for that special gift but can't decide, or maybe you're just ready to pop the question to that special someone, BlueNile.com has you covered either way. BlueNile.com has jewelry experts on hand 24/7 via phone or chat to help you find the perfect gift within your budget range. Or if you're feeling particularly creative, you can use BlueNile.com's online tools to create the perfect one-of-a-kind diamond ring. Whatever your occasion, make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more with the code LOCKEDON. So put your faith in Blue Nile and know that every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging so that there's no indication of what's inside. Shop stress-free today and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com and remember that promo code LOCKEDON to save $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. You've got Patricia Traina here with you on this Friday, June 3rd. We're talking Giants OTA observations, takeaways, all that good stuff that you want to know. And by the way, if you want to read about the Giants OTA, do check out Giants Country. I've been posting daily updates after each OTA, some of which are not open to the media, the general media, that is. But there's still stuff that you can kind of glean by what the Giants in-house media is reporting. For example, I posted an article on, I think it was Wednesday, I want to say, in which I read into some clues as to how the depth chart for the summer is shaping up. So if you want to check that out, that is on Giants Country. And I appreciate the reads as well over on Giants Country, as well as the listens here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. And before I get into the observations from OTA number 9, the plan coming up next week, going to do Twitter Tuesday at some point. Actually, we have Twitter Tuesday, then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the mandatory mini camp. Somewhere along the line, I think I'm going to try and do another live show with the entertainer. And then we'll just keep on rolling here. I will be going into my summer schedule, but I'll keep you posted on that. I mean, there'll probably be, once things slow down and there's nothing really to talk about, I'll go into my summer schedule, but still to come. So anyway, let's get back to the OTA, because that's why you're here, right? You're here to learn all about the OTA. So, all right, I want to focus specifically on the offense and some of the observations that I took away from the offense. Now, I have to tell you, I've been trying to figure out as best as possible, piece together clues, what this offense is going to look like and how is it going to benefit the talent that they have. Now, I came away with some thoughts on this. First of all, I've been saying all along that I believe the Giants offense is going to predominantly be a knockoff of Buffalo's offense, with a couple of maybe elements here and there sprinkled in from the Kansas City offense. And that's some of what we have seen so far in these practices. Certain throws, for example, we saw Daniel Jones attempt. I thought to myself, oh, wow, that came from Kansas City's offense. That's a Patrick Mahomes type of throw that he's trying to make. But the concepts and whatnot, I think, are purely Buffalo. So let's talk about some of them. And also I want to talk about how they're going to help Daniel Jones, hopefully, fingers crossed, have that breakout season that everybody is hoping that he has. All right, the first thing you need to know about this offense is it's going to be predominantly a passing offense. Right now, you think of teams in the Northeast in the old days and how it was a smash mouth, in your face, run the ball down your throat type of offense. I think that is gone. Right? I don't think that's going to be the primary characteristic of this offense. It's going to be a passing offense. And the way it's going to be set up is you're going to see a bunch of different formations, stuff that you have not seen before. And I'll talk about a few of those in just a minute. But the idea is going to be primarily to get the ball out of Daniel Jones's hands quickly while calculating the deep shots down the field. So, a combination, I wouldn't quite call it a West Coast offense, but it's going to be, I guess the best way to describe it is going to be a quick tempo, an up-tempo type of offense. All right. And there's some ways that the Giants are trying to help Daniel Jones become a better player. And we'll talk about them and what I've observed from them. Number one, the Giants are having Daniel Jones get the ball out of his hand quickly. We're talking like a 2-3 step drop, boom, throw the ball. All right. There's no hesitation. There's no thinking. It's drop back, throw the ball. And this to me, I think is important, because a criticism that I think is fair that I have had of Daniel Jones, and I think a lot of other people have had of Daniel Jones, has been once he takes the snap, his post snap read has left something to be desired. He's spending too much time thinking, and therefore he is not playing as fast as he could. And then, you have the rush and you have his internal clock getting all screwed up. Right. So what I think Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, are trying to do is they're trying to lessen the amount of thinking Daniel Jones has to do so that he can play faster. And what better way to do that than to have him drop back 2-3 steps and get the ball out of his hand quickly. All right. Get the ball into the hands of the playmakers, let them pick up the yardage and let them do, the so-called dirty work. Brilliant, right? Why didn't anybody think of that? This way the offensive line now doesn't have to hold a block for a long period of time. Daniel doesn't have to think. He doesn't necessarily have to be fooled. And he gets the confidence that I think has kind of slipped away a little bit when he does try to air it out. All right. So we're seeing Daniel make calculated, deep throws down the field, and he's looked comfortable doing it. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, how much of a pass rush has he actually had? There's no fear of him getting hit and so on and so forth. There's been rushes, folks. All right. Now, you're right. There's no hitting. There's no threat of him getting hit. But the Giants have sent, there have been simulated rushes at him. And if not that, they have a coach sometimes coming at him, with a big pillow, trying to swat at the ball or hit him or something like that, trying to simulate what would happen, if a defender got into the backfield and tried to harass him. So Jones has been throwing the ball a lot quicker. They've taken away some of the thinking that he has to do until he gets more comfortable with this system. That's a big thing, folks. All right. It's a new system for Daniel. He's a smart guy. He's learning it, but it's going to take time before he actually feels comfortable running it. All right. And I think a lot of people sometimes, lose sight of that when you're talking about a new system being installed and, how the quarterback is going to fare. Now, what else are they doing for Daniel Jones? I've mentioned this before, a lot of pre-snap motion. All right. This is also helping him with the processing part, because again, if you were to ask me what is the biggest weakness of his game outside of the turnovers, which he's kind of cleaned up, to be honest with you, the biggest weakness has been his reading of defense. Well, pre-snap motion, if you watched yesterday's show with Lori Fitzpatrick, we talked in detail about pre-snap motion and what that does for a quarterback. It helps. It helps the quarterback figure out what's coming at him. What is the defense doing? How do I, as the quarterback, have to adjust? It's so important, folks. And you could just see, watching Daniel Jones, he's playing with a lot more confidence and he's playing faster, considering that this is a new system in which a little bit is being installed every practice. A little bit new has been installed every practice. So the fact that he's not sitting out there and taking forever to decide where to go with the ball, that he's getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and he's completing passes. All right. It's not like he's just putting the ball up for grabs. That's all big stuff. All right. The interceptions we have seen in practice, a lot of them have been a result of a tip pass or a receiver falling down, or, you could make the argument that maybe a receiver didn't run the right route. So Daniel, so far in the practices we have seen, I think he's looked pretty good. I've been encouraged by what I have seen from Daniel Jones. All right, there's one other thing, one other element to this offense, and that is an increase of RPOs. And that's going to help Daniel as well, because again, between reading the defense through pre-snap motion and just, being able to adjust, they're giving Daniel a degree of autonomy to figure out, okay, what's going to work best, given the personnel package I have, given what the defense is showing, and so forth. And all really good stuff. Again, very encouraged by what Daniel has shown. Now, what's going to happen when he gets into a preseason game or a regular season game, that remains to be seen, obviously, but you're encouraged if you've seen Daniel Jones and how he's been responding. Definitely something I think the Giants can work with. And, look, they want it to work out. They would like for Daniel Jones to be their franchise quarterback moving forward. The jury is still out on him, but so far the early returns do look positive. Will they continue? Again, we'll find out when we get closer to, the preseason games and then the regular season. So still to come. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, BetOnline.net is the only place that offers the best information on the latest odds, contests, and player props for all your sports betting needs. No matter what sport you're into, BetOnline.net has you covered. Plus, they offer everything you need to know for live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head on over to BetOnline.net today to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the games start. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traina, and we're talking Giants OTA number 9, observations, thoughts, takeaways, and all that good stuff. And as a reminder, you can check out, if you want, my Instagram account at Patty Traina. I post videos, I post pictures over on my Instagram account, really trying to up my Instagram game. So if you want to check that out and, subscribe to my channel over there, would appreciate it. And, as I do appreciate those of you who follow me on Twitter. And I noticed somebody brought to my attention that I now have a burner account, that somebody created a burner account of me and the entertainer, who's a frequent guest on this podcast. And I think that's just so awesome. That's really cool. You've made it when somebody creates a burner account of you. And my only regret is that my parents aren't around so that I can tell them, hey, Ma, Dad, I made it. So, but thank you to whoever created that account. I think that's hilarious. All right, let's get back to OTA number 9, talking about some of the things we saw. Now, I can't go into too much detail regarding certain formations, certain, plays and how they unfolded, but I can tell you a little bit of, some things of what I've seen. And that is, I've seen a lot of creativity. Saquon Barkley, for example, you're going to see him probably as a receiver a lot more, probably as much as you saw him as a receiver in his rookie campaign when he had 121 pass targets. All right. Since then, coaches moved away from that. And I never understood why, because Barkley is so good in space. You put him up against a linebacker or a defensive back, chances are he's not only going to win that battle, but he's going to get some significant yards after the catch. And the last couple of coaching staffs have moved away from that. Now, I don't know if that's because of injuries or, maybe that had something to do with it, but this coaching staff is getting back to that. It's almost as if they went back and they looked at the film of Barkley from 2018 and said, oh, wow, this guy can move the chains as a receiver. We need to tap into this talent. So, hey, what a novel approach. Go back and look at the film of the guy's best year to date and figure out what he did well then and incorporate it in the offense, right? Shouldn't that be what the coaches do all the time? That's what I mean, folks, when I talk about, this coaching staff is trying to fit players and what they do well into, the scheme, as opposed to just saying, okay, this is a scheme and you look like you're a fit, but, if you're not, well, we're going to jam the square peg into the round hole. All right. So we have seen Barkley split out wide. We have seen him in the slot. We saw one formation that was pretty cool. It was Barkley was split out wide and Matt Breida was in the backfield. They've been splitting the tight ends out wide. I mean, they've been doing all kinds of creative stuff that really the past couple of coaching staffs haven't even imagined. And, it's a time of experimenting. I asked Coach Dable today, I said to him, at what point, or how do you balance evaluating with teaching? And he said, look, this has been a teaching camp. We're still getting, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, we're still getting to know the players. They're getting to know how we do things. So it's a teaching process. And the way they've been evaluating the coaching staff is how well do the players retain the information that has been given to them, right? So the coaching staff isn't necessarily worried about drop passes or interceptions or, that sort of thing. They're trying to get everybody up and running so that when training camp starts, everybody's working at a brisk pace as opposed to going out there and thinking. And that includes, like I said, the offense, especially the offense, which generally tends to start out more slowly than the defense. So we have these, different formations, a lot of empty sets, all right, which is something I don't think we saw a lot of in the past. And, I'm really excited to see what this offense can do. I mean, I think it can play mind games with a defense because, there's a lot of movement. I mentioned that before, a lot of pre-snap motion which had been absent from the Giants offense in the past. Why, I don't know, given the benefits of it. But this offense so far, from the little bit we've seen, I'm excited to see it fully come together. And I like the approach that Dable and Kafka and the rest of the coaches are taking with it. Again, the idea is to get it up to speed. So come training camp and the preseason games that they are playing at the speed they need to, because if you're not playing at the speed you need to, you're going to get left behind. Now, there's one other element I want to talk about, and this is really shaping up, I think, to be one of the most underrated battles of training camp. And we don't really see it now because, in the OTAs and the upcoming mandatory minicamp, there's no pads, there's no hitting, so you got to kind of temper your expectations and take things with a grain of salt. But what I'm really excited about is going to be the offensive line going against the defensive front. All right. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Wink Martindale, or actually it was last week, Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator, spoke to the media. And the message is, we're building a bully on defense. Well, guess what? The Giants are building a bully on the offensive line. Been a long time since we could say that, right? I mean, this is a group that offensive line coach Bobby Johnson wants to be a bunch of nasty junkyard dogs. All right. Nasty is the key word. And Shane Lemieux, who right now is the incumbent starting left guard, the projected starting left guard, I should say, he spoke about that nastiness and the attitude. And, call it a hunch on my part, but I think the battle between the offensive line this summer against the defensive front is going to be must-see TV, as they say. I would not be surprised if there's some squabbles, right? We kind of saw a little bit of it last week. Quincy Roche and Corey Cunningham mixed it up briefly during an OTA practice where, again, there's no contact. So imagine what it's going to be like once these guys put the pads on in the hot, humid weather, with each side trying to really impress the coaching staff and show that they are the main dog, so to speak. Got to be quite the battle. All right. But I can't stress this enough regarding the offensive line. The fact that the offensive line is bringing Nasty back is going to be huge. Because I don't know about you folks, but I'm tired of watching the offensive line get pushed around. All right. I'm tired of watching opponents run by these guys like they're human turnstiles. I'm tired of defensive fronts pulling stunts and twists and making the Giants offensive linemen look like, stand there like, duh, what just happened, I'm tired of all that. And I'm tired of seeing the quarterbacks get harassed and the running backs get dropped for losses behind the line of scrimmage. This offensive line, from what I have seen, from what I have heard from the players and from Bobby Johnson, who spoke a couple weeks ago, they're bringing Nasty back, and it's about time. So a lot to like so far in the OTAs. And again, I temper that by saying that it's been padless practices, no contact. It's been a teaching camp. But I think it's probably fair to say that a lot is going in the right direction now. Will it translate into wins? That's the big question. Because if it doesn't, then all this enthusiasm and positive showing and all that stuff and this feel-good feeling means nothing. So we'll see how it all pulls together. It should be fun, should be interesting. And I, of course, will be there at the mandatory minicamp next week. I'll bring you the updates. And we'll just keep on rolling right along here at the LockedOn Giants podcast. So that's going to do it for me for today, as well as for the week. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. And make sure you keep it here on the LockedOn Giants podcast for more updates. Again, we're going to have Twitter Tuesday. Then we're going to do our mandatory minicamp coverage. Maybe we'll do a live show next Friday with the Tana. So a lot coming up. And before we go into the summer schedule, where we bring you, instead of every day, we bring you 3 shows a week. So keep it here. And make sure you follow me on Twitter. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.